So there's the big debate about space. Is space fake? Are they lying about it? Is it just a complete lie? I think that it's kind of limited thinking to think that it is completely just fake, and that men on the earth are able to fake you out and lie to you and end the world, and that the majority of the world is going to believe their lie. I'm of the belief, same belief as Paul had, that we are not struggling against flesh and blood in this world. We are struggling against the rulers of the darkness in the sky. So it brings up a topic that Jesus, of all people, cleared up when he was here on the earth, when he was walking the earth. And it was when he was talking to Nicodemus about being born again. And he said, you must be born again to see the kingdom of God. And we see with our eyes. But space travel, or space exploration, has become a thing only in the last 60 years or so. Going the on-ramp, they're going slower on the freeway than I was going on the entrance ramp. So space exploration, is it real? Well, I can tell you just from what I've studied and what I've come to know as the real part of it. There is an industry in this world that for the last 60 years has kind of directed the world's arrow on the future. And it should have been the Bible and not this space exploration. And that's the whole deception in the end. But what I'm trying to talk about is what is actually happening in reality. Because there's a few factors that everyone needs to acknowledge and consider. One is satellites in the space station. They're up in the sky. I'm not saying what they are or if they're what NASA says they are. That's not the point I'm making. The point I'm making is that my eyes look up to the sky at night. In fact, I'll just share this little story this morning. At like 3 in the morning, I woke up and got up, and as I was walking by the patio door in my basement, I said, I always do this, I wanted to look outside and see if it was clear, see if the stars were out, see if I could see the stars, whatever. And I looked, immediately I saw a Starlings satellite. And yesterday morning, about the same time, actually a little bit later, it was just starting to get not light, but you could just start to see that the sun was going to come up. And I stood outside just looking for maybe 10 or 20 minutes. I was out there a long time because it was just beautiful. And I saw at least, and I filmed some of them, at least 10 Starlink satellites going in all different directions. That's one factor. There's something up there, and a lot of people would say those aren't Starlink satellites, those are something else. And I have to argue with that. And a lot of that comes from doing the homework, and not like not like we can know something by doing a Google search. We can know what's in the sky. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm saying, and here's another example, a channel that I always tell people to go subscribe to. It's a guy in the UK named Melky, Melgigg. He's a subscriber to my channel, and although we disagree on a lot of things, he is one heck of a photographer at like an astro photography. He's just talented. And if you go subscribe to his channel, and you'll see what I mean. And if you're not following any of this stuff, if you're not paying attention to the signs in the heavens, that's on you. But you can. It's free and it's public, and nobody's hiding any of this from you. They launched 60 satellites on a Falcon 9 rocket from Cape Canaveral. I think 7 times now. Yeah, there's 420 up there, or 422 if you want to get technical. They sent 2 experimental ones up first, but 420 satellites up there. They send 60 at a time, and it's quite amazing to me when that day happens, when the Starlink launch happens. I swear it's 20 minutes after the launch, Melky puts up a video on his channel of it flying right over the UK. And it's spread out, you know, however far it's spread out, the train, and then as you watch over the next few days, if you're watching, you'll see that spread out and become where like this morning and yesterday morning, where you only see one of these 60 satellites at a time. And if you stay and watch the path of one of those satellites, if you wait long enough, eventually the next one's going to come on that same path. This is fact. This is observable. This isn't something to debate about. It's something happening in the sky. And the same goes with the space station. You can watch it, you can film it, you can track it, and it's not difficult. So I'm not telling you that you should be tracking it or something like that. I'm saying that if a person wants to understand what is happening, you have to do a little research probably. Or there's another way. Faith. Faith in Jesus Christ. He tells you what's happening. And this is something that most people aren't aware of. When he was on the earth 2,000 years ago, the things he was saying then, he was actually saying them, well then, but he was saying them now, is saying them now, to us, specifically. An example is when he was talking to Nicodemus that I brought up a minute ago. He said, if you don't believe me about earthly things, like the things that he tells us about this earth, if you don't believe me about earthly things, how are you going to believe me when I tell you heavenly things? So how are you going to believe Jesus if you don't even believe him about the creation that he declared in 6 days? If you don't even believe that, how are you going to believe when he gives you answers and explanations of what's happening in the heavens? And a lot of people say he doesn't give us explanations of what's happening in the heavens. Yes, he does. Very clear explanations of what's happening in the heavens. Right after he said that, he said, this is when he was talking to Nicodemus, and I'm saying that he's talking to you right now. And he says, and no man ascended up to heaven, or has ascended up to heaven, except he that came down from heaven. That's Jesus' words. It's a quote. Whoa, traffic jam. I was going to have a good start today, and oh well, I'm sure it'll be fine. So he's saying nobody goes up to heaven. But we clearly like I was talking about Melky's channel, we clearly can look with our own eyes and see things up in the sky that men have put there, right? So what's actually happening? What is that? Do you believe Jesus, or do you believe your own eyes? Or are we misunderstood? Are we mistaken about what reality is? I'm not trying to confuse anyone. I'm trying to explain something. Here's how I can explain it. Pastor Charles Lawson, he takes the testimony of Jeffrey Williams, a NASA astronaut, who is actually of men, and he has I think of all NASA astronauts, he has the most accumulated hours on orbit. And the sad thing about Pastor Lawson is that he's saying, I've seen the pictures that he takes from the heavens. This is the mistake, or this is the deception right here. Pastor Lawson is falling for the deception. He said that, I guess this lane's closed down. He said that this guy is going up into the heavens. And so I'm saying Pastor Lawson isn't believing what Jesus said. And here's the answer. I wish I could tell Pastor Lawson this. There was darkness upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God was above that. He moved upon the face of the waters, or he moved over the face of the waters. What is darkness? In Genesis 1 verse 2, it's certainly literal darkness, like the lack of light, the absence of light. That's literally what it is. Because this was creation, and this was saying God created the heaven and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. So this is part of cosmology. We have the earth, and then we have darkness upon the face of the deep, and then we have above that the feet of God. He bowed this is Psalm 18, I don't remember which verse. He bowed the heavens and came down, and darkness was under his feet. And also, that was a nice quick traffic jam. I thought it was going to be worse. Also, God made darkness, this is in the same chapter in Psalms, God made darkness his secret place. His pavilion round about him were dark waters, and thick clouds of the skies. Now, if you keep going on the Genesis story, right after we learn about the darkness, the literal darkness that was upon the face of the deep, and then that was when God made the firmament and divided the waters from the waters. The waters from above were divided from the waters underneath. And this is dark waters. This is what NASA and JPL call dark matter. Sorry. Losing train of thought here. Okay. So that darkness is not, it's the sky. I guess that, in that way, it's the heavens. Like, but it isn't heaven where God is, like Pastor Lawson is thinking. And I think Pastor Lawson is not even connecting the reality of space and what it is. On Facebook this morning, someone said something about how they have learned that in reality there is no way to have a pressurized atmosphere as we experience on the earth. There's no way to have a pressurized atmosphere in the same space as a vacuum. And so there's this argument, which is a great argument, But that doesn't mean it just doesn't exist. It's just, here's the way I would say it. You can't have a physical space. You can't have a physical space that is a vacuum, first of all. But you can't have a physical space that's a vacuum in the same physical space as a pressurized atmosphere. I don't care if you have gravity. That's a false argument, it's a false argument to say, well, gravity can create a gradient. No, it can't. This is the nature of the earth that Jesus spoke into reality, into existence. But you can have, according to the Bible, you can have a pressurized atmosphere next to or in the same next to darkness without a barrier. Or, well, there is a barrier. It's a firmament. So, Pastor Lawson, where is Jeffrey Williams, this astronaut that you have put your faith in his testimony? Where's he going? He's not ascending up to heaven. I believe Jesus. So where's he going? He's going into outer darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. That's where NASA goes. And you know what else? The way that NASA experiences the space station, and basically the key difference between living on the earth and living in space is that in space you are perpetually free falling. So it's zero gravity. There is no perceivable downward force. You float, or they float. So what are they actually doing? They're perpetually, continuously free falling into outer darkness. And you know what that is? That's a bottomless pit. That's the abyss of fire. And I don't think it's just quite yet on fire. And there's ways to verify this too. Enoch said that the 7 wandering stars that transgress the ordained order of God, they were imprisoned until judgment in the blackness of darkness. So if you think about this, they're imprisoned in the bottomless pit, or to be accurate, beyond the bottomless pit in a place of darkness, blackness of darkness. That's what Jude said. So I'm just using Pastor Lawson for an example because he makes such a great example of himself, or he makes an easy target, whatever you want to call it. I got nothing against Pastor Lawson. I hope he comes to the truth and repents and turns from this wicked solar system and heliocentric globe lie that Satan has sold us. And I hope all of you do. If you're having a hard time believing that the earth isn't a globe like all of us were taught and all of us believed to be reality, if you're having a hard time with that, let me just leave you with some more words that Jesus said to Thomas after Jesus had been raised from the dead and was still on the earth and being seen by the disciples. And they gave Thomas hadn't seen him yet, and they gave their testimony to Thomas saying that he was alive. And Thomas was like, no way. I don't believe this. He said, unless I can stick my hand in, or fingers in the holes in his hand and thrust my hand into his side, I won't believe. So remember what Jesus said to Thomas right then at that moment. He said, blessed is he who believes without seeing. And I think in this case that we're in today, this gospel being preached, you might not consider it a gospel, but it is. It's saving millions of people in the world. There's literally millions of people in the last 5 years that have converted their belief system and changed it because of truth that came into the world. And it's truth that came by the Holy Spirit. So, blessed is he who believes without seeing. Have a great day.